Welcome everyone. It has been a great day of the Knowledge Graph Forum, and I'm quite happy to have the pleasure and the honor to introduce you to the panel, which will conclude second day, and it will be dedicated on the leading use cases in the financial services industry. And with me, I have a tremendous set of people who would be able to dig into all the trends, use cases, about which are like most popular in the industry. So like I would like to ask for a short introduction of the panelists while we are gathering. So Aurelia, perhaps with you, like let's go alphabetically.
Yep. Hi everyone, my name is Aurelie Zovko. My first name is hard to pronounce, so they call me AZ. I'm founder and CTO of Xenia Graph. Xenia Graph is boutique knowledge graph, I would say cognitive solution company helping customers build exciting solutions.
Good. Joe, perhaps it's you.
I guess I'm next. We're doing it alphabetical, right? Joe Hilger. I'm the COO and one of the co-founders of Enterprise Knowledge. We are the world's largest dedicated knowledge management consultancy with about 80 consultants. So it's a real niche. And in that time, we've built, worked on close to 100 different graph projects. So we're very familiar with Ontotext and what you can do there, including a lot of work with the financial services space. Nimit?
Thank you, everyone. Thanks again to Peo and the Ontotext team for being here, as well as my compadres on the panel, Joe and AZ. I'm Nimit Mehta, CEO of Top Quadrant. We're an enterprise data management platform focused on helping organizations get the most value out of their data. And under the hood is a enterprise-grade kind of choice collaboration platform built around a knowledge graph, kind of shepherding enterprise and shared semantics across 15% of the Fortune 500, 15% or so who we serve, focused in the financial services and life sciences sectors.
Thank you, gents. So like I have the privilege to be able to pick your brains about like what's the best use of the semantic technology in the financial services. But where I would like to start from is the trends and the drivers. We are all familiar that in order to have a good initiative, we need to be able to get the attention and, if you will, the blessing, the executive support of the executives. So what you would say would be the executive themes that you see trending and which are most related to the adoption of semantic technology?
Who do you want to go first, Peo? Should I jump in?
You, Joe, please.
Okay, good. I showed no patience there, but it's a fun question. For me, we're starting to see people get it, and what they're starting to understand is that graphs are not just a tool for storing data and information. They're a contextual layer that's an integration tool. And we're seeing that in a couple places. You see the Enterprise 360 case study where organizations are saying, I've got information about my most important assets all over across all my different systems. And it's not enough just to have kind of point-to-point integrations. I need something that defines what those are and aligns them, and a graph can do that. And then the other one, and this is the one that really is exploding from what I can see, is this whole idea of, Gartner started calling it a data fabric. Now people are calling it a semantic layer or a contextual layer, but it's that layer that sits on top of your data lakes, on top of all your data sets to provide context and make what you have both machine readable and human understandable so that you can start to fuel things like AI, et cetera, because everyone's doing everything about AI. So that connective tissue is really, to me, what I think we're seeing growing in different manners. Who's up?
Thank you, Joe.
I can maybe start. For me, It is a digital transformation, and my last I worked for a big insurance company. I was responsible for IPRPA and enterprise knowledge graph. You know that business processes and automating these business processes is a huge value. For example, goal was to save over $100 million in a year, right? So, you know, for me, when you have these big transformation of business processes and you're trying to automate, including, you know, any machine learning, semantics, and knowledge graph can bring a lot of value, and that can help you really to drive the agenda and get attention, especially because changing business, any business process is not easy. There's a lot of resistance and politics, right? So for me, that's kind of main driver towards outcome, because you can measure and see the value because you're saving money to business.
Great. You guys took two of my favorites. Just to add on, you know, in many ways, 2024 is going to be a very weird year. 2024 and into 2025 is going to be a weird year. All economic market outlook looks to be a tough kind of a delivery year where few new projects will be launched, but it's about delivering what existing promise has been sold. Simultaneously, we're walking into, I thought someone here was going to take generative AI as the trend. We're walking into an entire, an earthquake that's going to change every system and every team that everything that we do on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, I think 2024 is going to be a buckle down year, and we're simultaneously expecting the buckling down, but also a rapid explosion of experimentation. And that it's good. You kind of have these like countervailing trends that are pulling, and we see CXOs, CISOs, CDOs really focusing on the trend that I see, which is modernization, because it has a little bit of flavors of both. It ties what AZ is talking about with digital transformation, as well as making sure data centricity is the root of your approach. And it's actually a beautiful use case and a beautiful kind of trend that semantics can really accelerate and kind of tie to, because of the duality of its ability to both accelerate and also make things compliant. Modernization is cut in a few ways, right? There's really infrastructure modernization that's moving to the cloud. What AZ just said is actually really tied to that, which is making sure your business workflows, your data consistency, your schemas, all are perfectly mapped and not lost in the process of transformation. Architectural modernization, which is what Joe is going, where it's around data centricity, the semantic layer. It's the consensus architecture that many people have said. If data is at the center, semantics is the one layer outside of it. So that concentric value. And the one that's really fun for me is talent modernization, making sure all those skilled workers that we want, things like ontologists and taxonomists and engineers and knowledge engineers, all these folks that have been potentially on the fringes or trying to make their case are going to become front and center. And it's going to be beautiful to see all the power of the teams and the organizations structured around the data and all the new opportunities for probably a lot of the people at the conference.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. This is going to be a really nice discussion. And what I like about you here is the actual tremendous experience and the sense of maturity that you bring. And while we can all agree about the promise of the data modernization, putting like a joint semantic layer or automating the processes, like it would need to be able to make a better and better cases for the usage of this. So like when we are talking about making a return of investment case, like what would be like the key business KPIs that you see most, or you would like to put the most accents when you're making a proposition based on return of investment? Like this is like when you had the rubber to meet the road case, like what you would see like the most business benefits in it.
So I will, out of respect to my peers, I'll go first because I was able to kind of piggyback on their great answers
last time.
So it depends on the layers. Like obviously the business value case is broad because semantics is broad. It's not one thing, right? So if you're talking about the 3 or 4 big ones, really it's cost, revenue, risk. The pattern that we see often is, it depends on what layer, what part of the organization you're entering in. Early on, the easy use cases around cost savings, time savings, and elements like that. As you move upward one layer, this is the middle layer around the business use. This is the product manager, the insight generation. This is about revenue. This is but what we see is the most kind of, as you hit that top tier, it's about risk, right? The existential threats to your business. It's about thinking about what happens if COVID happens again. It's not about, can I hit my numbers this quarter? The most forward-looking data leaders and business leaders look past that and say, hey, this business has to survive for many years. It's not about just hitting the quarterly numbers. How do I make sure I can manage risk? And the big risks we see are the ones that we are imposing upon each other: policy, international policy, GDPR, privacy, things like that. And then the risks around the opportunity cost loss for not discovering everything possible to make the best decisions, right? It's not necessarily the product that could be made at a 90% quality. It's the data set that you couldn't find to take that 90 and go to 100%.
Thank you, Nimit.
I like to add, just going a little bit lower, like for me was that, employee or business productivity. So what we put in production was, that kind of semantically extraction and automating business process. And it was measured every day, like business had a real-time dashboard measuring how many transactions or things they process and raise the quota. So I'm thinking that was for me measure, because if they didn't process all a quota for one day, my global CIO will call me and ask me what's going on, how are you going to fix, right? So that was one measure, really measuring these business processes, which is bringing, revenue. And of course, part of that was cost reduction, because when you think that you get close to, STP and you can process transaction in real time without human intervention, right? That, people have more time to do cognitive work and you process more transactions. So that was another measure, really, with KPIs, how much was that process before and how is running right now, and one is benefits. For example, before, one of the processes need 10 resources on 10 things. Right now, you can do it with 3 and you can calculate the benefits. So that's kind of 2 concrete use cases I used in the past.
Thank you, Aurelia.
AZ, I love your second example. We just finished a project for, actually, I won't say we finished, but we're doing non-financial risk identification for a massive financial services organization. And one of our people put together an ontology and some semantic processes to identify non-financial risk. They were able to, in a 1-hour demo, show the work that was going to take 10 external consultants to page through stuff and find in months, they could do in hours. So this gets back to Nimit when you mentioned risk identification, AZ when you talked about automation, and then when we talk about cost saving, that's the piece. Now, I do want to step back and get back into the data fabric and that connective piece. And Nimit, you talked about all the world issues that we have right now, and it's everything from, we're working with a large retail company that's worried about sales, but also their supply chain. And today they have all these separate data domains that are frankly siloed domains. They can't see across, so they can't say this problem in my supply chain will affect. This is where I've gone with sales, because it's just too hard to connect that. And so for us to create an environment where ultimately business users can ask questions of a system and not be limited to, well, the SQL lets me just get to X, Y, and Z, or I need to go get a SQL developer to update my Tableau dashboard so you can actually get the answer you need. That kind of power, getting that knowledge and information and making it seamless. Talk to your data bot. To me is where we're headed, and that's, as you put it, Nimit, that's the protection, and I think that's why people are pushing for ChatGPT. I think that, or LLMs, should we say, and I think that's why organizations are willing to experiment because if we can fuel our mid-level leaders with the decision-making capabilities based on information that they've never been able to see together, we're going to make all of our companies more effective, faster moving, really more agile, to use a very old school term. And we're going to truly create data-driven organizations like we never have before. So that to me is the exciting part.
And Theo, I like to add a lot of customers asking, how the Gen AI and LLMs will impact their business and kind of what use cases, how they can prepare. So I did a couple of these things really helping, I will not say KPIs, but really helping organization figure out, the future and how they need to align and transform to really adopt what Nimit is saying is big change coming to follow us, not in the business, just in private life. So
Most definitely.
For the panel,
Yep.
okay.
Please, Nimit.
I just for the audience, what it's really nice to hear with AZ and Joe. I think about risk a lot, right? That's the world that the folks that we partner with, the risk there, but it's really good tactical approaches to taking that and converting it into value. Because risk, the easiest way to do risk assessment is mitigation of fines. So 6 billion euro of fines in GDPR in the past 4 years. Great. So you don't have the risk of that. But what's the real impact of me is what Joe just said actually is really nice. The ability to say, what would it take? What's the replacement cost of the outcome that I'm looking for? Business user X. I want to make sure we don't have privacy issues. This is what it would cost you to do else. And there's a way you can put a number there. And with AZ, kind of just putting productivity, like metrics around productivity, I think is it's really good. So just kudos into the panel there.
Thank you, gents. And actually, since we are touching on improved data management in various ways, I would like to ask you if you have a favorite candidate of an well-established business process, or let's say business domain or area, like if we use in terms of business information architecture, which is the most ripe candidate for improvement by introduction of any of these technologies. Do you have something where you believe that the value that can be brought is so big that you can target this on its own? You both indicated on couple really Nimit, and this one, let's say, curious to hear if Joe has such a candidate, something which would be the process which can be really improved by technology.
Ultimately, what we look for, especially on that data side, is give us a problem that is hard. So we had one customer that came to us and said, financial services firm, and they said, we have 10 different business units as to how people work with us. And they could be working with us through banking, investment services, credit cards, et cetera. And asking the simple question of, when did Joe Hilger first start doing business with me? Well, you've got different files all over the place, different terms, different fields. It's just not that easy. So how do you solve that problem? And what we're doing is we're applying this new layer to say, this is how we solve this problem. And once they can answer that first question, we go, okay, what's the next one? And what's the next one? And so when we talk about ROI, typically what I would say is, when we show up, we say, okay, now you've seen the power because you've talked to our other clients, or you've heard it in different talks. I'd say, give me your hardest problems. We're going to start solving them, your data challenges. We're going to show you how it's done, and we're going to repeat. Some neat things about this is graphs are so flexible. It's so easy to add a new relationship. So when we solve one problem, we're not stuck like we would be in a relational world to say we can't change. We can solve one and solve another and solve another and just add to the graph. So when you talk about business value, I want to solve the problems that our clients couldn't solve before, and show them that not only is it something they can now do, it's something they can do in a repeatable fashion by themselves. So I want to make IT
Quite
disappear
a
for this.
claim. This is, and you have a phenomenal set of people, Joe. Like, I always been fascinated by the team that you gathered. So it's no wonder that you're tackling the hardest problem. But how about you, Aurelio? Like, do you have a favorite process that you can do much, much better?
I will say, I will start from negative example. When work on investment bank, we created a Raspberry Pi bot with a huge green button, and we give for the traders on the trading floor to hit when they want to do trade. So I will not recommend that kind of processes and things. And we at the beginning even voice enable it, and then was like disaster because someone else can execute some trade. So I think that's example, you should not do it. But for me, my favorite is actionable insights, real-time insights. Couple of examples where people making cognitive decisions and they need the real-time insights, right? Example is that I'm insuring this property and the CEO was, something happened and he's doing some crime or things like that, right? So I think through that use case, you can get a lot of power of real-time semantics and another thing is how to connect these different events semantically that can and drive some business decisions and help them making decisions, things like that, right? So that's one of the things I think is like for me will be top process you want to implement.
Okay, real-time insights. Thank you, Aurelio. Nimit?
I have a few, but really, this is what we do, right? As a software tool that serves these large companies, just seeing the patterns. I'll make a point on the semantic layer in a second, but the big two are, Joe, you mentioned it well, like semantics is perfect. It's a great solution, particularly, it's great when things are complex, or that like the solution set is complex. The data and the solution set needs to be flexible and changing. I'd add a third one, which is comprehensiveness. So you can't just do a part of your organization. You need to be able to scale across the whole, and you can't just do a part of your data. You need to have all, otherwise it doesn't work. And that's where semantics shines. So it's not everything to everyone. It's for some things, it's everything, right? So the two, I think about the control side of the house and the create side of the house. On the control side of the house, my favorite is policy. I think I mentioned it earlier, and it's because there are no solutions on the market that can scale for, I think in 2026, there'll be no less than 15 different policies, equivalent to complexity of GDPR, but wildly different across every geolocal location across the world. Each of those could represent an entirely new implementation and system, or it could just represent the same system in a new graph of policy, over and over layered upon itself. So I think that the opportunity of the complexity, but also what's my old boss would say, the simplicity on the other side of complexity, like that's where the graph really sits. On the create side, in working with like working with the largest one of the largest insurance companies in the world, and two of the largest banks, it's about everything related to do around customer 360.
Yeah.
And customer 360 is just a visualization. It's some discovering around a design. It's a design of a view. It's a single view of a customer, but it's really a platform upon which data and insights is able to paint their full picture, right? Is it about what are you trying to have visibility across? Fraud, right? Those are the big two: fraud and marketing, right? Fraud. What is the model around fraud? How does the model change? How does it change? What are the features? Is it initially it was you're a bad actor on a bad list. Now it's you've clicked in 4 places and you bought a certain thing with a certain credit card. Those are going to be constantly changing, and bad actors are going to do the same thing in reverse. They're going to continuously change, and you'll need to be responsive. The flexibility of a graph is really powerful there. And also large analytics around graph analytics is really powerful when you think about GraphDB and Xenia Graph and others, really kind of being able to manage. On the marketing side, it's just about more personalized. It's more competitive to market and to build, to grow. And so making sure that this whole idea of empathetic marketing, not only do I know what you care about, that's easy, but I know what people who you care about, what they care about. And that influence graph, being able to power really powerful market. That's complicated. In graphs, it's even complicated, but the power of it is material ROI, material return. And in really complicated, in competitive environments, like insurance, like regional banking, not necessarily national banking, but those two, we see that a ton.
Nimit, I love kind of what you did there. You're really talking about the art of the possible, and we're changing the line. Policies. Used to be we could define these policies, but that's all we could do because that's all you could manage with this scope of data. And the reality is, and I know you're in some ways talking about your product because it's very good at this, but that you're enabling the ability to put much more complex policies and automate the process like AZ talked about to implement it. You're talking about Customer 360. Now we can say it's not acceptable, it's not good enough to say that I got to look across 3 systems to understand what's going on. And then you move on to talking about kind of more better identification of things like fraud, et cetera. We're really starting to redefine what's possible. And this is something that still Payo, I think, is new. A lot of people just assume they can't do things because they couldn't do them in the past. This is where we all have to educate and show people what can be done, and what's not just what can be done, but what's happening now. And these are the stories that are going to change so that we're no longer solving individual problems, but solving patterns of problems. And I think that is a mindset that our future leaders need to take because things just move too fast to work otherwise.
Great.
I actually add one thing. I want to add one thing there just because I really like what you said. When you think about the approach, traditional technology approach to talking to the world, it's our features are so cool. They're great. They're the best. Right? That's not just a vendor. That's even internally. How do you sell? We have the best features, the fastest query time. But really what people are needing is the opposite, right? Which is actually show me the value, show me the outcome, show me the ROI, all that. But what's interesting is how that changes once you get in and prove value, the technology being able to expand the way you think. So the features become second, but they become even more important. You think about tip of the spear versus the whole army. The graph is the army that you're getting there. And you get to do analysis and analytics that you can't do. Things like when you generate hypotheses on your data and analytics, you're generating hypotheses really just like, I'm a smart person, I'm thinking of this, I'm looking at some data sets, and this is what I think I'm going to analyze. The graph becomes the biggest discovery engine for those analyses. Now you can look at common pathways. Now you can look at where if the graph is non-directive, is it going to direct, or you're going to have a no resolve, and being able to inquire around the no resolve when you have a graph that ends in two outcomes. Things like actually looking at not only the common path, but the outliers, and seeing what activities you can do to change behavior, particularly in the marketing world. But anyway, the graph provides you a platform for discovery of new ways to do insights that you and probably your teams have never even thought about because of the limitations of technology.
This is something which I quite like from you, Nimit. I believe I heard this from you. You call it the 2 sides of the house. Like one side is interested in control, like your favorite topic of risk. And other would be like the data insights chaser, like the analyst. They're willing to get like data 360, like the real-time insight, which Aurelia mentions. And like I believe that the job positions the semantic layer, being able to create a semantic layer on top of your data, something that will be able to join this together. Am I hearing this correctly? Because this would be quite the promise.
And maybe this is it may be. My answer to you is maybe, Payo. The semantic layer, again, if it's not powering business outcomes, my answer is who cares, right? Like, actually, who cares? No one cares, right? And then we have to get to the mindset of saying it doesn't matter if it's a new science project. It has to have an outcome. Now, to your point, I agree with you. Now, that was me being tough on you. I think it intermediates amongst a lot of people. It provides collaboration and reconciliation, which is important because it takes human processes and says, we believe this to be true. A customer is a customer is a customer. It doesn't mean something else. And so the layer in the semantics is about our collective wisdom put into data and enforced upon it. And like that's what it is, powering many applications over and over again. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think the answer is it provides an opportunity to have the two sides of that, the control and the create side of the house reconcile. We often find those at loggerheads. I have a few ideas, but at the end of the day, those are tough because no data analyst wants to say, you know what I'm going to do? Apply really good governance here when it's going to slow down my decision making. Like that is just not going to happen, and it's reasonable. And so in the same way we talk about how do you sell the case to a company or on semantics, each side of that house needs to make the case to each other of why both working together is going to make each other's job easier.
And Pierre, just to add on that, what I agree, I was responsible for enterprise knowledge graph, and it's a hard problem. Big corporation take long time, lot of effort, lot of many things, right? And it's always question, to continue, what's the value? So I'm thinking just and it's necessary to have that enterprise semantic and connect everything across organization, but most of my successes are when I pick something simpler, especially some process where it's not, well-defined process, right? Business is agreeing, if you go to 3 sides of business and you talk about some concept and you get the same answer, then it's probably not good use case, but use cases you can find which are well-defined, there is no ambiguity, and you implement that with semantic knowledge graph and you spice a little bit of large language models. I think that was very successful. At least my successes in a couple of organizations, big organization, was probably do the both, but get the benefits from the smaller use cases you can implement and you can bring smaller value and then you can grow from there. And then connect the big enterprise knowledge graph, that hard work that they can grow the solution.
Excellent. I would like to get a little bit then more, if you will, personal. Like, can you describe a project or use case of a project when you put some of your personal time? What has been a cool project in let's say, the last year that you said like that this is so cool that I would like to work on it on my own? Something like just the joy of building stuff. Like I know that you're so. In addition to that, like general, like something which is cool, something like people would find cool. I'm really interested in learning more about this one. What has been something that you enjoyed building or working on?
I can, maybe not perfect example, but always cloud and get resources, but at home, I finally decide to buy a big desktop, and I think I go full-time CUDA. I buy the latest NVIDIA card, and I was so happy, big machine, 32 cores, and I start running some LLMs. And then, I get some errors. I said, what's going on? I have so many CUDAs, over 1,000 CUDAs. Why things not working? So now bottleneck is, how much RAM you have your video card, and then you need to play with that. So it's a really kind of how figure out that I can run some models at home, plan my vacation and play with these models, but having something at home I can scale. And so of course now I need to bring enclosure, bring more video cards just to run some models, but that's kind of fun project I did a couple of months ago.
We would not be living in 2023 if you were not doing this. How about you guys?
So I don't get to code anymore, and that's probably a good thing. Those days are gone. But so I tend to find projects that interest me. Kind of, wow, that's a challenge that we've seen before. I'd love to figure that out. About 3 years ago, I got real interested in what I called phantom data, which apparently the industry decided was something different, which is the concept of helping organizations find that information that they need to secure that they don't know they need to secure. So information that's out there, that should have some sort of classified or some security applied to it that isn't there. And I got into it, researched it, did a bunch of studying, wrote a blog post on it. We had a client where we were doing some of the work with it and didn't have a name, so I called it Phantom Data. Now I'm told it's called Dark Data, and it's really popular. So I won't say this is kind of a new one, but it was one where I went down that little rabbit hole of what's the art of the possible, how would we solve this, and what would we do? And going after that kind of phantom or dark data problem. Where is that information you have that you're unaware of, that you need to know that it's there, and frankly, probably need to make sure it's secure?
Nimit, where your passion lies.
Oh, a lot of things come to mind here. Right now, I'm running a few processes on my computer to try to see if we can capture the connection between, and then we have danced around it, this idea of generative AI and the value of knowledge graphs within it. At top quadrant across the organization, we have been very thoughtful about how to actually incorporate this, what we could see as ground moving technology, but not do it in a way that's only hype oriented. And so in the past couple of months, it's really about saying, how does this actually solve problems that we have today, and then address the world of what we see in the future. And we'll talk about this probably more over the rest of the chat here, but first, utilizing actual, like a human in the loop, human aided supporting around standing up standing up semantics and a knowledge graph that represents your organization. I think we've done this a number of times with internally, and are beginning to do it with some of the most forward-thinking customers that we had. And so that's like natural language querying, that's suggesting new recommendations, enabling discovery, so that you don't need any other language other than English to query your graph. And then over time, actually just beginning to test this idea of where does this fit? But really starting with the brass tacks of, let's be practical, let's stand things up, let's solve problems that we have today, and use this technology, learn it, and observe how we can actually incorporate it further.
Excellent. There is no escaping from the Gen AI. I had such list on the Gen, but we're getting very naturally there. So, like, yeah, I believe that since I'm into computers, and I've been pretty much all my life, there has not been anything like it. And like AZ, I'm fascinated with it, played with it, and still, like, I'm not sure which part of it is hype, promise, and which would materialize in the reality. So, like, looking at the market, I know that you all are trying to build stuff using generative AI. Like, where do you believe we are? Like, if we say we have the Gartner hype cycle as a reference, if we are like on this curve, like, where do you feel like your thinking of application of generative AI is? I'm looking specifically as your thinking of somebody who spearhead these efforts, who are the people that will have to actually implement it and put it in production, not to promise it, not to chart the bright future, but the thinking about putting it in production. So how do you feel about it? Let me phrase the question in the most open sense about the promise of generative AI and knowledge graph. How do you feel that this promise still stands in the market?
I'll jump in. This is exciting. Yeah, so Peo, it's interesting the way you phrased that. I would say if we talk about the Gartner hype curve, I would say it's still going up. We've yet to hit the trough of disillusionment. But that's from kind of people's reaction to it. And when I think about the Gartner hype curve, one of the things that kind of, one of the ways I've always looked at it is, part of the reason for that is people get excited about new technologies, but they don't truly understand how and where to best apply them. So they throw them at everything. And it's bad idea after bad idea. And what I see right now is everyone's trying to say, what can I make ChatGPT, what can I make LLMs do? And honestly, we have customers that have said, okay, for next year's work, we need an LLM somewhere. We'll be like, well, what do you want to do? I don't know. We just have to have one, right? And those aren't smart. Those aren't business-driven requests. Those are, I've got to meet someone's excitement. And we're in that phase still. Having said that, I watched a demo the other day from a vendor who was doing this data fabric, and they were asking their data bot questions, complex questions, and getting English language answers better from a complex data set. And that to me was amazing. And the tools are in place to do that. There is a maturity. I asked how they did this. They said, we used RDF. And I said, oh, why'd you do that? And they said, well, there's a million RDF projects working with LLMs. Why would we try to build something on our own, right? Follow the standards, work with that, and then make good, smart choices about what you do, and ask yourself kind of, how do you make those choices? We actually have a consultant that was presenting last week at a conference, and I listened to him, and he talked about two different types of uses for Gen AI: full automation or augmentation. And then what are the right types of solutions? But that's where we are right now. We're talking about what is a good solution versus a bad solution. That means we're still immature. The technology isn't, we are.
This is why
Wow.
I'm so happy to have you on the panel. Like, this is exactly the type of maturity which I always enjoy. So
I would just, oh, sorry, Peo, go ahead.
no, please. I have nothing but praise for Joe. I would very much eager to listen to you.
No, I just to add to what you're saying, Joe, the technology is also not mature. I mean, you think it's if I had, pick a number, $100 million, $200 million to invest into generative AI, the smartest decision I would make is put that money in my pocket. This is moving fast. You asked the question like, what's going? This is like this is moving fast, and it is incumbent on either you're all in and you're chasing the shiny rabbit, and someone will grab it. Right? That'll happen, or you are cognating and understanding and thinking about how this can apply and solve problems, and being dreamers, but also practical dreamers, and making sure things can happen well. And so we sit on the side of, to your point around where the hype cycle is. If you want a chatbot assistant right now that's powered by Gen AI, the quality of what you get right now, we're like at the junior analyst stage. We're like below the junior analyst, right? We're probably at some elementary school kid compared to what the future could be if you wanted it. So we are not, we've got a lot of things to do to get there. And I think it's, we think of that as a lot as, it's going to, Nasho, I agree with you, it's a hammer looking for a nail. I think there are nails out there. Nails will be found, but the idea is LLMs are just, they're not even, they will not resemble themselves the way they look right now in 6 months. Forget about 5 years.
Nimit, this is starting to get interesting. And already,
so I have a little bit different view. Just for myself, I started AI ML over 35 years ago, and that time was huge hype. I remember reading books about neural networks, and I built some expert system, used a lot of Prolog, and as we know, there was a hype and nothing after that. But this time, I believe it still is hype, but I believe it's real. I feel it. And I was waiting for a long time for this. Maybe I'm very biased around this, but my point is that did a lot of using LLMs and putting solutions. Just one example, we built the audit ontology, working with IBM, Watson, spend a year and a half, we get around 80-something percent on extraction. Was huge success, huge team, right? I probably can do that use case in 1 or 2 developers, including myself, in maybe a couple of months, even less. So I'm thinking, it is hype, and But I think a lot of these things are just making our job easier. And I believe that, and I'm putting these solutions together and I see good results. Maybe it's not production ready, but still for me, I don't need to be 90% accurate to go production. Maybe 80 for some business process is good enough. Maybe even 70 is good enough because people doing manually and making a lot of errors. So I strongly believe it's a hype, but I believe it'll be changing how we do everything very soon. And another example, just my personal, I'm doing a lot of coding, and now I go to ChatGPT and I ask him to write the code. And just for examples, I had a call with Microsoft Research. They're pretty much asking me how I see that the DevOps and Agile and ML Ops and Data Ops will change, and how Gen AI influence everything, right? So at the end, I said it influenced a lot, and my prediction, I'm thinking and preparing myself that hopefully in the future, I'll have virtual developers. I'll be able to create as many virtual developers as I want. I can create a couple of Scrum teams. I think the main thing is, how to describe what they need to do. And I think that's now semantics and how we connect everything together, how I connect these teams together, they can work and deliver something, right? So that's kind of where I thinking hype is coming to be real and be a huge change for all of us.
Excellent. Okay, and like I very much like the diversity of the viewpoints. Like, and I agree with your point that now, like, as we had blockchain on everything, now we have LOM on everything. Nimit is strategic, and like this is something that I would quote you, Nimit. This is interesting bet to keep like in the record book and see how it turn out, and relay with the practical applicability. But like when the dust settles, it would be a while. Like I guess we'll live in crazy land for a while, and I believe we all enjoy it. But when the dust settles, from your experience, what key capabilities of the LOM technology would survive the hype? What are like the key foundational promises that these technology would be able to keep? Like what we can count on to like the realistic part? Like what is this addition to the capability that we can count on in your belief? This is forward-looking question. Nimit, let's start with you. I would start with the skeptic.
I'm not a skeptic. I love this stuff, but it's important to make, because I think just to tie what you're saying, actually, skepticism, I agree with you, AZ, that some business processes could take 70%. As you move up, the idea of being able to put something in production at 70%, with the number, I think I've been in double-digit CDO meetings where I've heard something to the flavor of, we're not going to just throw ChatGPT in our organization because it's too unsafe. Like we just will not do it. There's no way. It's open. It's unsafe. It's like just a fear around it. So that you can do something to test in dev and maybe exploration, but really when it goes prime time at the larger organizations, they don't run the risk of putting something that untested on, especially now, maybe later. So I guess, Teo, to hit your question on the dust settle, here's the model I use, right? I think if you close your eyes and open them, generative AI is going to be driving majority of our work, right? Talk about 5 years from now or whatnot. And what does that look like? Right? There's two models here. There's, language model, unbounded, trained, learned, experimented around how to speak and manage human language, bounded by enterprise context, right? That's the decoupled version of this. Couple them together and you have unbounded, tied with the enterprise context. That's your semantics. And you have not just someone that can prep an email for you, but you have a data analyst, you have a coworker, you have a second hand, right? That's what will happen. I think that's like the direction. Now, you decouple them again for a second. Language is going to be won by who has the most data on training language. So my money's on Google or Amazon or whatever. Like they'll create the best language models. The idea of enterprise context, that's what will exist and settle. It's what we all are doing right now. It's actually what semantics is doing. We're building a basis upon which all of this will need. And these are not statistical inferences. This is the stats come in language. These are the facts that drive our organization. What is a customer, right? What is our product? right? What is fraud? What is risk? How do we define that as a company? That's our collective wisdom. That's right here. So when you think about the role of graphs and as the dust settles, it's going to be the best training foundation. It's not good. It's the best training foundation. ChatGPT isn't just like a black box. There's a bunch of ontologies. There's taxonomic structures there. This is a technology. It's not just a thing. And into that, plugging in or plugging on top of your enterprise context, that's the method. That's how this will play out. That's my prediction. I think that's kind of where the world is kind of observing it. The piece I'll add here is that the graph enables something that doesn't exist in any other sets of technologies, which is, we call it LLMs on rails. It's the rails that govern the LLMs. Things like your governance model, making sure that a junior analyst doesn't ask 6 questions and accidentally get the CEO's home address, right? It's your caching mechanism. Every time you interact with a prompt, you should save a new fact that's going to improve the facts of your organization. And then more importantly, the idea of actually being able to have consumption and the ability to view and discover new things, that is going to be part of where the graph provides value. Oh, and the last piece is output input validation, right? You already govern and manage everything that goes into your graph. You won't be able to discover how the thing joins, because that's what the model it does so many times. You cannot trace backwards in lineage. So you'll take the same policies you managed, all the data sets you have internally, be able to reapply them, make sure you don't run the risk of fines. You get lower hallucinations and you get a lower ability to, increased ability to use this stuff. So that's a long answer, Peo. This is going to happen, but it's going to take time and it's going to need to be done well to get into the largest organizations in the world.
Nimit, this is phenomenal answer. This on its own is a keynote material. Like this answer that you just provided, I would be very happy to see this as a keynote, and this is tremendous. Thank you very much. Guys, try to match him now.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I will do a practical example. I struggle a lot building bots and applying ontology, and really when you ask questions you type and you get some functionality. It was a long process. So I think what will survive right now, we can really talk English. I hate to type, right? So like I can speak and I can really get that English conversation or whatever language conversation and improvement in that automated agents, because I believe that AI bots are going to grow and be probably everywhere very soon. So I think that will stay, really, that interaction, natural interaction and capabilities to have some assistance or AI bots which will help you, doing your business or personal work.
Thank you, really.
Okay, I'm gonna steal from Nimit here because I liked some of what he said. Of course, it was what did you say, Peo? It was keynote speech worthy, and I think it was. The first thing we're all going to learn, like we learn with any other technology, is you need a foundation to start with, and graphs and semantics are that foundation to say what are the rules, what are the guide rails we follow. I love that. So at the end of the day, one of the things we're going to learn is you just can't throw things at an LLM and have it work. You need to do the work up front. But then ultimately, the dust is going to settle that we're going to find that there are repeatable processes that are measurable and distinct and understandable that we can use. And those are going to be the obvious places we use LLMs. That's what's going to stick, those repeatable processes that we do every day that we don't have to. It could be something as simple as a code review. AZ, you were making me think of that. If we're doing DevOps, why are we doing code reviews? Why not automate that with LLMs, right? Things like that. So it can be in any industry, but we're going to get good at picking what those repeatable processes are, and we're going to apply them. That's what's definitely going to stick.
Thank you, Joe. And I would like to add.
Quick to add, I think to what Joe said, the coding, that will stay. Honestly, now without LLM, my coding skills are dropping big time. So that will stay.
We all cheating, KZ. Like the Copilot, he changed everything. It made me feel smart. So I understand you. But Naso had something really keen, and I would understand him that it's in the comment section, like the foundational task is the entity linking, the process of assigning identifier, turning things to string, if I may now so. Like this is like where the language and the actual graph meets each other. And this is like where Naso is, let's pose it, he's looking for progress in this direction. And I would very much would get his sentiment in this one too. And actually, it has been, we're getting close to the time. And yeah, this is why I always enjoy spending time with you, gentlemen. But yeah, let's try to get into the like more of as a closing. As for like a closing, I would like to pose it. If there is, let's say, a short sentence or a paragraph which each member of the audience must, you would like each member of the audience to hear and remember, like what this sentence would be, like what be like the good message that you like to leave with the audience member. Like this is like to be able to summarize the phenomenal discussions that we're having so far. Who would do like the task of summarization first? Who would try to?
Okay, in that silence, I guess I'm stuck at number one. You know, I think for those listening, you're obviously interested in graph. You're interested in what's the art of the possible. Again, and I said this earlier, graphs offer the flexibility to solve problems that we couldn't easily solve before. Do your research, challenge your assumptions, and look for those hardest problems and have the experts in the space prove out whether or not they can solve it. That's what I'd say to you, and I think you'll be surprised with what you get from it.
Thank you, John. Who would like
I
to
will,
yeah?
I will say to embrace AI and knowledge graph, right? I'm thinking that in your business, personal life, just don't fight. Big changes coming, and have fun, and find some good use cases to implement, because it will stay, in my opinion.
Thank you. Yeah. Nimit.
Yeah. This has been a fun conversation, so I hope folks have been listening and having a good time. I've been writing notes the whole time. The thing that I like to just leave with everyone here is semantics is not maybe 15 years ago. It was something that was kind of kept in the corner of the organization, but it's happening. It's actually never been easier to get started on it. Build when you pick your first projects or pick the ways you want to go change the world. Focus and build with value in mind, build with scale in mind, so flexibility, and then communicate effectively the outcomes that you're actually driving. There's just a lot. We don't even need, there's so many ways you can use semantics to power your organization. Pick the one that you can nail. Pick the one that you can drive it home, and drive it all the way home. Don't just create a cool endpoint for someone to do cool stuff. Drive it all the way. Be very clear about what you're building and why. Even if it's narrow, don't build the whole layer to start. It's not going to work. Build the thing, get it out the door. Build the human problem here, and the adoption problem is going to be real. And it's because people have had many poor implementations of poor technologies. And so it's a very understandable thing. So everyone here can start. There's a number of use cases, simple to complex, that you can kind of pick from. And there's a lot of the folks on this call here have built accelerators. We have teams in mind thinking about your business problems and the things you can't do today with semantics that with semantics you could. So just try and get started.
Thank you, Nimit. And actually, gentlemen, this has been indeed one of the best conversations. Like from each one of you had like this brilliant. I would steal with you. Let's not be like let's not phrase it lightly. I always learn from you, but I definitely would like to listen to more of you. So thank you very much for your time and everything to this conversation. This has been tremendous pleasure for me, and to everyone in the audience. This is the second day of the conference, and it has been quite a very good conference so far. We have a third date coming tomorrow, and you'll hear more even from the people here. So again, Joe, Nimit, Aurelie, thank you very much for your participation. You have been tremendous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This was
Bye-bye.
fun.
Bye, everyone.